climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an exciting talk. We will move straight on to the next speaker and have questions at the end of the session. Can I ask people online and in the audience to continue adding the questions to the Padlet link we have, same as yesterday? Just add it to the top of the session and we'll pick that up as we get to the end. And thank you. I'd like to now introduce our next speaker is Kerryn Little from the School of Geography, Earth and Environmental Sciences at the university, who's a postdoctoral researcher, and her title is Wildfire Danger Across Spatiotemporal Scales, and follows very nicely on from our previous talk.
Good morning, everyone. We'll test if the click is working. I can use the web mouse, it's fine. Good morning. Today I'm going to be talking about smaller spatiotemporal scales than what we have been talking about, specifically about wildfire danger and how the factors that influence wildfire danger vary from across landscapes to across regions, and from daily timescales right up to seasonal and interannual timescales. So this is part of my PhD research that was supervised by Nick Kittredge and Laura Graham, funded by PyroLife, which is a Marie Curie ITN, and it also includes some work by the NERC-funded project toward a UK fire danger rating system. So fire danger refers to the combination of factors that affect the initiation, spread, and ease of control of wildfires. And there are three groups of factors that are important for determining wildfire danger. That is the fuel moisture, fire weather, and fire behavior. And today I'll be mainly focusing on fuel moisture and fire weather. So fire weather, the weather conditions that are conducive to wildfires occurring, and fuel moisture, the water content of vegetation or how dry the fuels are. This is a really simplified representation of quite a complicated system, but these groups of factors interact with each other and are important for quantifying wildfire danger, which can then be communicated through wildfire danger rating assessments, most commonly like these watermelon segments you can see here that were developed in Canada more than 50 years ago. I think it's important to note that we don't yet have a functioning fire danger rating system in the UK. The fire weather and fuel moisture are highly spatially variable from within a single plot to across landscapes and across regions. And I guess this is a major challenge, but also an opportunity for wildfire research, is the scaling up and scaling down between these really important field experimental studies and the larger remote sensing based approaches that are needed for the implementation of these research findings. Wildfire danger rating systems tend to use surface fire weather observations, so inputs like air temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, precipitation, and those are highly variable from point to point across the Earth's surface. And their spatiotemporal variability means that it's hard to reliably predict wildfire danger beyond the short-term range. So one line of direction of my research has been to consider the influence of longer varying synoptic scale circulation patterns on surface fire weather and wildfires, in the knowledge that these longer varying patterns can be more easily forecasted in the medium range. So in the mid-latitudes, synoptic surface weather observations are generally driven by the west to east progression of synoptic circulation systems. High pressure blocking events generally result in hot, dry surface weather, and they can lead to droughts, heat waves, and extreme fire weather. So it therefore goes to suggest that these factors will also be important for wildfire activity. So what I wanted to look at is, can we directly associate synoptic circulation with surface wildfire activity to then open opportunities up to extend our ability to predict wildfire danger into the medium range. And extended early warning forecasts of wildfire danger are really useful for all different scales of fire management. So from the individual local fire service level right up to cross-country resource sharing decisions is helpful for that. So to that end, I wanted to associate extreme anticyclonic blocking events with surface fire activity in Europe. And the way I characterize synoptic circulation is through persistent positive anomalies in geopotential height at the 500 hectopascal level. And those are called PPAs for short, because I won't be saying that again. So essentially what a PPA does is we were working at the 1 degree level. And so for each grid cell, it detects, is this geopotential height anomaly exceeding a certain daily varying magnitude? Are those anomalies of a certain size of 40,000 square kilometers? And have they persisted for a duration of at least 5 days? And if that's yes, then it marks that as a PPA event and it tracks the movement of that system. So we did that for Europe through 2001 to 2021, primarily focusing on the March to August timeframe. So trying to capture the main spring and summer fire seasons for different areas of Europe. For wildfire events, we used the MODIS satellite daily remote sensing burned area product, again at the 1 by 1 degree grid cell level. And so each grid cell contained daily burned area total. And then we went on to classify PPA fire days. So PPA fire days are days in which wildfire burned area was recorded in a grid cell, either during or up to 5 days following the presence of a PPA event. And the reason we had that time lag is to allow for the PPA conditions that pre-dry the fuels before that PPA event moves on, and then subsequent the burning that happens after the pre-drying of the fuels. So in that 20-year period, we identified 514 PPA events, an average of 24 a year, each extending for a duration of 10 days on average. July and August were the highest monthly percentage PPA days, representing the Scandinavian blocking high and the high pressure system located off the coast of the UK. We completed an odds ratio analysis, which looks at the likelihood of wildfire occurring during or following a PPA event. I said up to 5 days following, again, following that time lag for drying. And so we found that on average, wildfires are more than twice as likely to occur during or following one of these PPA events. As you can see, there's a lot of spatial variability within that. At the country level, most countries are slightly more likely to experience wildfires during PPAs. And that again has a seasonal component. So for instance, for the UK, PPA fire days are much more likely to occur in summer than spring, sorry. We use self-organizing maps, which are a sort of unsupervised artificial neural network circulation analysis for identifying the key atmospheric circulation patterns associated with PPA fire days. We've done this for all countries and for Europe overall, but I've focused on the UK here. So these 4 nodes represent the 4 key circulation weather types associated with PPA fire days. So as we saw in the odds ratio analysis, summer PPA fire days were much more likely to occur than spring, but all of the summer PPA-driven wildfires are actually characterized by one main circulation pattern, which is the bottom right there, where the positioning of the high pressure system has results in more of the easterly wind flow that we expect during these conditions. And the remaining 3 weather types are all present through spring, which is also when we get our greatest burned area. So the percentage of PPA related wildfires by country is generally between 10 and 40%. So given the complexity of human-driven fires in Europe, I think that is a significant percentage contribution of PPA fires to understanding wildfire danger. And that offers some insights towards beginning to think about extending medium-range forecasting of wildfire danger across Europe, especially across large regions where multiple countries are involved. And PPAs tell part of that story, but there's still a lot more to unravel there in terms of understanding the synoptic drivers of wildfire. And so, furthermore, while PPAs are, I guess, they explain the medium range forecasting ability, there is actually a lot of local variability that's unexplained. So wildfire danger rating systems that use fire weather observations are generally focused at the regional scale and don't consider variation in fuel moisture or fire weather across landscapes that contribute to local wildfire danger. So that led to the next stage of our research to look at to actually quantify, well, how much does fuel moisture vary across a landscape and what are the drivers of that variation towards developing robust fuel moisture models for predicting local wildfire danger. We focused on Calluna vulgaris fuel moisture content, or heather, which is an important fuel type in UK heathlands and peatlands. And I guess it's relevant to consider these small scale variations here because small scale changes in fire behavior can actually, small scale changes in landscape conditions can actually result in quite substantial differences in fire behavior. And we completed this analysis in the North Yorkshire Moors National Park in Northeast England, and we had 36 sampling sites. We set those 36 sites up so that each hypothesized landscape control, all of those combinations were represented on the landscape. So differences between north and south aspect, high, medium, and low hill slope position, soil textures, and canopy density of heather. And so I guess that allowed us to develop these landscape linear regression models to explore what actually controls fuel moisture variation at the scale. And each site was equipped with a micrometeorological station for measuring the spatial distribution of air temperature, relative humidity, vapor pressure deficit, and wind speed, which formed the micrometeorological models that we used. And we looked at fuel moisture across 7 fuel components, being the live and dead canopy and stem material of the heather plants, the surface moss and litter, and the underlying organic material. We did this for conditions of high fire weather risk in the fire season of 2021. And we observed quite significant variation in fuel moisture across the landscape, across all of the fuel layers we investigated. And that variation results in differences across the landscape in whether the fuels will ignite, whether they'll sustain wildfire spread, and also whether the organic layer is vulnerable to smoldering combustion. And there's also a temporal component to the spatial distribution of fuel moisture, particularly for live material. So during spring, the live fuel moisture content and its variability were lowest, then increasing through summer as green up occurred alongside new growth. And that spring period is particularly important because for wildfire danger, because spring is the main fire season for these fuel types in this environment. So these figures show the partition variances of the landscape model and micrometeorological linear regression model, which sort of allowed us to investigate the relative influence of these factors in driving fuel moisture variation. Overall, the combined effect of both models explain between 60 and 72% of fuel moisture variation, and landscape factors were the dominant control over micrometeorological conditions. Where landscape factors were the dominant control, for live heather, the contribution of the shared variance was greater than the contribution of each individual model by itself, which sort of suggests that there's some relationship between the landscape factors and the micrometeorological conditions. But for the most part, actually, landscape factors themselves controlled fuel moisture beyond just modifying local micrometeorology, which really suggests that it's important to directly account for these relationships with landscape factors. And I guess the outcome of that research was to set the scene for a new avenue of landscape scale fuel moisture research that acknowledges the fact that fire danger rating systems may need to be specified at different levels of detail for the different functions that they perform. And so the natural progression of that research is the work that's been done by the NERC funded toward a UK fire danger rating system. And the University of Birmingham has led the fuel moisture work package of that. So for the past 3 years, we've monitored 50 sites across the UK, spanning across different climate regions, soil textures, land covers, and that's resulted in this